Thank you so much, Giselle. Thank you for having me here. That's the first thing off to the Schenker Institute for having me and TESOL International Association be part of this very important panel. ELLs, just to add one more demographic to the mixture, I think it's at this point projected that about 33% of the children in schools will be of immigrant origin in 2050. And so very much are ELLs and the larger group of immigrant children part of the fabric of our schools and of our society. I thought I would do three things today, and the first one is lovely cut shorter because I was going to start with the exact same point of recognizing that when we say ELL, that's a very diverse population, and we need to kind of recognize that when we think about policies. Then I'm going to talk about kind of how have we responded to this linguistic diversity in our schools, and talk a little bit about whether we view this diversity as a problem, or, as Giselle just said, do we look at this as a potential resource? And I want to kind of argue about what does it look like if we were to take a language as resource perspective. And what might be, if we don't do that, what are some missed opportunities, not only for this population, the ELL population, but I would argue for all students, and kind of leave that as a setup for my co-panel members to fill in some of those ways that we can do that. My area is in teacher preparation and two-way immersion or bilingual education, and I always try to kind of put those two pieces together. And being part of TESOL International Association allows me to do that, since we do both of those pieces, both preparing for excellence in English language teaching as well as thinking about that we add English to other languages when the students come to school. So just to add maybe two pieces to the diversity point. The fact that ELLs are distributed very differently this day and age around the United States is something that we might want to pay attention to. So it used to be that we have, the strong states, they're still big, California, Florida, New York, they still have the largest numbers of English language learners. They're not necessarily the fastest growing population. So we have many states that are now faced with the fastest growing population of ELLs, such as South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia. And these are states that don't have a long history of having ELLs in their school systems. So they're now trying to figure out how to build infrastructures in an incredibly rapid fashion to meet the growing needs. We're talking about 200, 400% increase in terms of the ELL population. So when we think about policy, particularly from a federal level, we're looking at the Floridas and the Californias of the world, or the United States rather, who have a long history and a lot of infrastructure. And then we have these, what we call new destination states, that are still trying to build infrastructure. So thinking about policy, we have to be sensitive to these very, very different contexts. So that would be my first add-on piece for the diversity argument. The second part is that when we think about the ELLs themselves, that actually at the elementary level, many of the ELLs are US born. About over 70% of the ELLs are in fact born in the United States. At the secondary level, a much higher percentage come from other countries. So you can imagine that their experiences when they come to school are also very distinctly different. And the kinds of things that teachers need to be able to know and be able to do will also be very distinctly different. So that just to kind of say that the one-size-fits-all kind of thinking that we might be tempted to do kind of needs to kind of shift a little bit to be able to respond to these differences in contexts as well as differences in the ELL population and not have this broad stroke. So historically, I think the way that we've been responding to this linguistic diversity in school is what I would call the language as a problem approach. Richard Ruiz's wonderful framework of language policy orientations says, that's an approach that says that the fact that the students don't speak English is a problem that we have to fix. And as long as we fix this proficiency problem, all other social problems will also be repaired, so to speak. This approach tends to look at English language learners as deficits. Something is wrong with them as individuals, and when they come to school, we need to fix them. And the way to fix them is by teaching them English as quickly as possible, with the goal of having them become monolingual English speakers. And I'm not going to go into the debate whether English only is better than bilingual education, but that's been a common response to this linguistic diversity. This has unfortunately also resulted in this idea that we can have the one best model to do this across different contexts. A good example of that is Proposition 227, when that was passed in California. 1 year immersion program for all children if they were ELLs. It didn't matter whether they came into kindergarten, whether they might have been a middle schooler, whether they might have been a high schooler who may have had limited schooling opportunities before coming to school. So very much that there's one model that we think can meet the needs of all students. What I want to challenge us today is to think a little bit around a different line of thinking, and that is what would happen if we said that the linguistic resources that ELLs bring to schools would in fact be seen as a resource. What would that look like, and does it actually make sense to do that? Let's not make the assumption that it does. And I want to tie that to the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish with our educational system. So we're trying to build what we call 21st century skills, problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, the ability to be constantly learning, be flexible, and the ability to work with students who are, or others who are very different than you are, and you have to be able to collaborate, right? This is how we structure the workplace. We want students to be college ready, and we want them to be workplace ready. So here's then the interesting question. If we were to leverage the linguistic diversity of the resources that the ELLs bring to school, might that actually help and support those broader educational goals? And I'm going to say yes, it does. So let's think about it for a moment. What if we start out with the premise that we need to provide ELLs quality English teaching for sure? They need access to good quality instruction. But what if we added to that the notion that in addition to doing that, we're also going to develop their skills in languages other than English? So now we're positioning bilingualism as a resource. Now, what do we know about the benefits of bilingualism? We actually know quite a lot about bilingualism and the benefits. One of the kinds of benefits that we tend to talk about are cognitive benefits. We've been looking at little kids that grow up with 2 languages at the same time, and we compare them to monolingual children and say, now what is it that you can do that monolingual children cannot do as well? And one of the things that they can do is they're more flexible thinkers, they're better problem solvers, they're able to kind of suppress kind of distracting information. We also know that if we look at the lifespan at the other end of life, that more and more research shows that for people, adults, who continue using both languages throughout their lifetime, that postpones the onset of dementia by about 2 to 3 years. So those cognitive benefits we've been looking at the early stages as well as at the later stages in life. So that's an important benefit from a cognitive perspective. Educationally, we've also documented benefits of bilingualism. So bilingualism tends to be associated with things like lower dropout rates. They just completed a significant study that looked at many, many thousands of bilingual students and found that students who were bilingual, so both fluent in English and in their native language, were 66% less likely to drop out of high school. That's a significant benefit of bilingualism. Students who have attended a dual language program in elementary school are more likely to choose AP classes in math in high school. Now, you all know how important AP math classes are for what happens after the high school. It supports the students' graduation. Lastly, people have also connected bilingualism with the likelihood that students will graduate and then on to college, including 4-year colleges. These are real educational benefits that have been directly associated with bilingualism. I also want to talk about economic benefits. And more you hear this story of, yes, so does it make a difference whether you are bilingual or not in terms of your earnings? And the answer is yes, it does. Somewhere between $22,000 and $3,000 annually in early careers, even after controlling for all of the other variables that may also contribute to this particular outcome. Fluent bilinguals are more likely to have a full-time job as opposed to a part-time job or be unemployed. These are very real and very important benefits of bilingualism. So if you take those benefits together, so cognitive, educational, we can add to this, of course, social and cultural, as students are able to negotiate different worlds, staying connected with their own family, but also being able to negotiate other communities and other members, as well as the economic benefits of bilingualism. I would say that if we continue to take a language as a problem approach and only think about English and not think about bilingualism, we have hugely missed opportunities. And these missed opportunities, again, are not just for the English language population, but think about leveraging these opportunities for everybody to have these advantages of bilingualism. And if we think about a global world and a global marketplace where more and more companies say it is really important for our managers to have the skills to negotiate in other cultures, in other languages, and have multilingual skills, and this is a benefit that all students should have. And it's something that, as we prepare our students, all of our students, including ELLs, for the 21st century, that we need to leverage this particular resource for the ELLs themselves, but also for other students as well. Thank you.